Morning and welcome. We are here to talk to you about ways that you can help support your students based on what is happening in the curriculum. And so I am Shandar Hobbs. I'm the Executive Director of Curriculum for RLA and Social Studies for Alvin ISD. And with me, I have two of my fabulous team members, Joni Wyndham and Michelle Abney-Kaler, and they are going to share some information with you. If you'd like to use the chat to ask a question, you can do that now. We will have some time for questions at the end. And so we're going to just get started and bring you some information that we hope will be helpful for you. Here is our plan for today. We're going to talk about the standards that students are required to master in each of the grade levels that we serve in Alvin ISD. We're going to talk a little bit about genres and different genres that we read and write, our scope and sequence, which is the big reason why you're here today, and then how to support your kiddos at home, and then we'll have time for questions. When we get started and we talk about standards, when you look at reading language arts in the TEA and Alvin ISD world, it's often used as an acronym for RLA, and that just means whenever we're teaching the reading and writing literacy skills that students need to be successful, the state has the TEKS, the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills that we have to learn. And when you look at reading language arts from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, a lot of the standards stay the same, but what changes is the depth of what they're asked to read and write. And so over years, and when you look at the scope and sequence, you'll see a lot of the same vocabulary. Sometimes that vocabulary increases slightly based on the academic words that they're being asked to use, but it's the complexity of the text. So it's making sure that kids have exposure to text that gets a little bit harder over the school year and over their years of education. Vocabulary plays a huge part in that as far as children learning vocabulary and then using that vocabulary in their reading and writing, because when it comes to STAR tested grade levels, one of the biggest issues that we see that kiddos struggle with the most is the amount of vocabulary that they have to have control over to be able to read the selections that are provided to them. And so we want to make sure that kids have access to vocabulary that you don't always use in everyday common language. And so that's a big part of what we teach. And then genres. And if you don't know, when we talk about a book, they're all labeled under some form of genre. We tend to talk about books in fiction and nonfiction. So it's informational text versus made up and fictional stories. But then within that, there's lots of other pieces that fall. We have poetry, we have traditional literature. And so it's not about kids knowing those and knowing them, all the components of them and have that memorized. It's more about them having access to multiple genres so that they can find what they like and they can have exposure to different types of writing and different authors' craft. And so we want to make sure as students are reading independently and as they're reading across the school year that they have lots of access to different genres of reading. So different things we're going to talk about today. And so we kind of talked about this a little bit when we talk about fiction and nonfiction. We want to make sure that kiddos understand that there are different things that you can read. We are so much in Alvin ISD about choice. We want kiddos to choose the kinds of books that they want to read. And so we tend to, as readers, we have our favorite genre, but we want to make sure that they are exposed to and read other genres, because you never know when it's going to become your favorite. So even if a kiddo is really into realistic fiction, want to make sure they have some access to a biography every now and then, or a procedural text, or some drama, all of which create a well-rounded reader. Okay.
Good morning. I am Michelle Abney-Kaler and one of the curriculum coordinators. Thank you, Dr. Hobbs, for giving us an overview. And now I want to take you and show you where you can access student expectations for their learning and also what teachers are to teach. So we've given you a link, and I'm just going to walk through how you would access this information. So once you go to the link of alvinisd.net, you will come to this page, and you will look for departments. So you see it right here. And underneath departments, you'll scroll down to curriculum and instruction. This is our department. Once you get to curriculum and instruction, you'll come to the right over here to English language arts. And then this is the important page you want to be at, because each one of these are our TEKS. These are the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. This is what the state requires students to learn and teachers to teach. We are bound by the law that this is what we are teaching. So we've taken all these standards and we've made grade level scope and sequences. So this will give you an idea of, during each 9 weeks, what are the standards that are being taught.
And so I'll jump in here. I'm Joni Wyndham. I'm also one of the coordinators. And we just wanted to dive in a little deeper based on what the state says we have to teach. We then take that as a curriculum department and focus in on lessons and things like that that we share with teachers. And so once you get to our grade level scope and sequences, you'll see that they are organized by 9 weeks. And so this, for instance, that we're showing you now is a first grade scope and sequence that you can access so that you can see we have it broken down by phonics and phonological awareness. And then we have reading and writing on the bottom. And so on the phonics scope and sequence, you can look to see exactly what skills students are learning in this 9 weeks. And then you'll see for the second 9 weeks that we're in right now, our students in first grade are analyzing fiction and nonfiction. And then we put those together because, like Dr. Hobbs said, we want to make sure that kids are exposed to all genres. And so we have an author's purpose and craft unit as well in this 9 weeks that students will be introduced to a lot of genres that we'll go through. And then over on the right side, we have our writing units. And so you can see that we will work in first grade on personal narratives this 9 weeks and also informational writing. So those are things that as you're able to access this, that you can help narrow down the types of questions you're asking your kiddos every day when they come home and you say, what did you learn today? And you hear, nothing. No, we know they learned a lot today. Their little brains get overwhelmed. And so sometimes when we narrow our questions down, they can then access some of the things that they did. And this would help you to know what they're working on.
So here's an example of fifth grade. And again, it's set up very similar as all the grades are set up this way. And so you can see that, as Joni said, on the left side, we have the reading, and on the right side, we have the writing. And what we've done is we've aligned the genres as the best that we can, because some of them don't always align perfectly. But the idea is, while you're reading fiction and learning about the characteristics of fiction, you're using that knowledge in your writing. So we've worked really hard to align that. If you look at the circles, you see art-controlled vowels. So this is what fifth grade during the second 9 weeks is continuing to work on. This would be OR, ER, EIR, things like that. It's a little bit more complex and your word steady. And then below, we also, in the writing in the green, you see we have grammar. So these are the expectations for the grammar skills that are required for the second 9 weeks. If you look at the boxes, I just wanted to bring your attention to the depth and the complexity of the vocabulary and the rigor at which kids need to meet the student expectations. So you see the first one, infer multiple themes. That's a pretty high level standard for any student, but this just shows you that there's the expectation of rigor as well as what the teacher is expected to teach. And this is also informational for you because you can use this vocabulary when you're speaking with your student or your child, because inferring is a word they would have to know. And so I just boxed a few for you to take a note and look at. And if you look at the right-hand side, the second box is basically to revise drafts to improve sentence structure and word choice by adding, deleting, combining, and rearranging ideas for coherence and clarity. That's quite a mouthful just to say. So as you can see, the rigor is high. Anytime you can use any of the vocabulary, you're supporting your child in what they're expected to be learning at school. Again, as Joni said earlier, this is a sequence so you know what standards are being taught, but our curriculum provides lessons for teachers that really go deep into each one of these standards and gives them the tools and the resources for quality instruction. So we've talked about where you locate these standards in our scope and sequence, and then what students are expected to learn. But I want to just share with you, how do we know where to begin our instruction? Because as you all know, not every student that comes to school is at the same place as each other. So I thought it was important that you know that for pre-K through 2, there are state required reading tools that we have to use. And our reading instruments are either iReady or Texas Kia. So that's a state requirement that we have to report back to the state. And then the local assessments we give are the DRA, which is a developmental reading assessment. And that's asking a student to read a level text. And we take an oral reading record and ask some comprehension questions. And all that does is target or help us to identify a level that is closest to where they're reading. And then teachers will always do ongoing oral reading checks where they're listening to kids reading, analyzing those assessments throughout the school year, because that helps drive their instruction. And in second grade, they have what's called a CBA. It's a curriculum-based assessment, and they have 2, one in November, December, and then one toward the end of the year, just to make sure that they've got a good grasp on the first semester and to see how they're ending at the end of the semester. Grades 3 through 5, if you have students in those grades, you're probably well aware of the STAR assessment, where if you didn't know, the STAR assessment has really upped its game in the past 2 to 3 years. They're not only assessing reading, but students have to write essays, short constructed responses, and there's always been a grammar component. So they have the STAR assessment, which is usually taken in April. Before that, there's an interim that is highly recommended. It's not necessarily required, but it's highly recommended. And we take that around February. It's a shortened version of the STAR that gives teachers this idea of, okay, here's where the students are. Here's how I can direct my instruction to help them be more successful at the STAR. And then the local assessments are, again, the DRA, ongoing oral reading checks, and curriculum-based assessments. These are what guide our instruction so we can tailor fit it to meet the students' needs. So, what goes on in a classroom? This is an example of components of our integrated literacy framework. If you look at grades pre-K through 2, you're going to see lots of opportunities for read alouds, shared reading where students are reading together, interactive writing where students and teachers are writing together, and opportunities to begin building their independent reading. You'll always see direct and focused reading, phonics, and writing instruction. Teachers will also be pulling students in small group instruction in both reading and writing. And then in the pre-K through 2nd grade, you'll see a lot of literacy-based stations, and those are where students practice those skills they've been taught in a more independent way. And if you move to grades 3 through 5, you'll still see read alouds, but it's a little more scaffolded up a bit. So you'll see read alouds, but you also see book clubs. And the big idea here is exposing to literature with deep discussion. Again, you will always see direct and focused reading, phonics, and writing instruction, small group instruction, and we move away from stations in the upper grades because we want to give them opportunities to spend time actually reading and writing and practicing the skills they're learning. So again, you will see some of these things mostly every day, but some of these things you'll see throughout a week, throughout a unit. but children have the opportunity to be involved in literacy framework approach on a daily basis.
Okay, and so from there, we wanted to show you just some end of the year expectations throughout the grade levels. And so this is just an example of an end of the year expectation for kinder. And as we work with kids in whole group, like Michelle said, there's always a direct teach, and then we have small groups. And so throughout those, we're working on text that the students need at their level. And so this would be an end of the year kinder expectation, where really this is, they're at the level where it's simple storylines. It's usually familiar topics. There's some patterns and repetitions. Readers can use their background knowledge on some of those words that they're not able to sound out yet as they're learning their phonics rules. And so there's usually a little bit of dialogue in this end of the year kinder level. And so this is where we want to get kids to in mastery and above. We're always pushing kids from where they are. Like Michelle said, we get an idea of where they are, and then we just continue to grow. But this would be what an end of the year kinder text would look like. And so if we move to the next slide, we have an end of the year first grade expectation here. And as you can see, the texts get a little, we've got more words on a page. Our pictures, our illustrations get a little smaller here. And so here, really, we've got kids just getting into reading. They've got better eye control. They can read silently most of the time. That's kind of a big thing. At the end of kinder, they're still reading out loud usually. Whereas in first grade, they slip into that where they're doing a little more silent reading. They're doing those things in their head now, and which we usually see more visually in kinder. Our genres also include expository and procedural. We've got some nonfiction here, even some fantasy, traditional literature. So there's a lot of genres that they are introduced to at these levels. And one of the big things in fiction here is that our characters typically at the end of the year in first grade go through some changes in the text from the beginning to the end. And so that character development is starting to get a little deeper at this level. And then, as you'll see, that continues every year, and every level that they go through, that complexity, like Dr. Hobbs was talking about, that depth of the text gets a little more difficult. And so we want to make sure, as we are working with kids, that we continue to help them develop those understandings that we go through.
So second grade, this is the end of second grade, you're going to have students reading a larger range of genres. Words are going to be longer, multi-syllables, and beginning with different endings. Sentences may begin getting longer, and there often is dialogue in second grade books that they're reading. Some of the genres start to move from your typical fiction to biographies and memoirs, and as I said earlier, more chapter books. It's pretty straightforward, but it sometimes has a little more of an elaborated plot than, say, in first grade, and some of the topics are a little more advanced. You'll also see in nonfiction that you're going to see more graphic features, such as table of contents, headings, sidebars, different maps, and illustrations. So let's look at third grade. So at the end of third grade, we've got mysteries and adventures added. They're chapter books. You can still read shorter books because a lot of picture books are higher level, but you're really getting into the chapter books at this time. Often they'll have a series that students follow. They'll have many episodes, a more complex plot, multiple characters that are developing and changing throughout the story. And again, the concepts tend to get a little bit higher. A lot of the words will have base and root words with prefixes. Sentences are more complex, and again, more multisyllabic words. You might be getting into 2 and 3 multisyllabic words and lots of proper nouns. And then we'll move to fourth and beyond, so fourth and fifth grade. At this point, students are actually probably by second grade, students are beginning to read more independently and usually silent reading, but we still want to listen to their reading as a check-in. But if you're reading at fourth and fifth grade levels, again, it's larger chapter books. You see a lot of graphic novels at these levels that are pretty multidimensional and complex. You see lots of character dialogue, lots of characters. You see flashbacks, foreshadowing, very complex vocabulary, and sentence structures are really seen at this level. So if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to kind of recap this and show you, look at where students begin in their elementary career as a kindergartner. From "Where is Lion?" said Little Monkey, to where they're going to end. Guess what, Pete? My brother Fudge said, I'm getting married tomorrow. Quite a big change over the time. And so this is why we really, really encourage teachers to understand where students are and work with them in small groups to continue getting them to where they need to be.
So before we go on how to help support your students, we did have one question in the chat box that asked, how do you know where your students are reading? And so for our kinder through second grade students, on their report card, there is a box that tells you every 9 weeks if that student is reading on or below level. And so that would help you with that. And then in third through fifth grade, you would be able to see that in their grades, because if they're not, most likely they're going to struggle, excuse me, mastering the standards, the TEKS, because they're not reading on level. And so when you start to see those things on the report card, you start to see that in maybe the work that they bring home. Those are the conversations you definitely want to have with the teacher and asking them, where is your student currently performing? The most important thing is, how do you help your students at home? And that is by reading. You can't become a better reader without reading. And so we know years worth of research tells us that reading for at least 20 minutes every night will really help students get to where they need to be. Now, again, it kind of goes back to some of those things we talked about in the beginning, that when students have a choice in what they're reading, they want to be part of that reading process. They love to be a reader. They get engaged in that. They want to read to you and with you. That makes that reading piece more engaging as well. Want to make sure that they're getting access to multiple genres. So maybe you're taking a trip to the library or the book, but Alvin ISD book bus, and you're picking out different genres. Maybe you're picking out the genre that they're currently reading that 9 weeks or in that unit to help support that at school. And then once you've finished reading a section or a chapter or a text, you're talking about it. Just say, hey, tell me about what you read. What did you like about this book? What didn't you like about this book? And then there's going to be times when a student might pick up a book and they're really interested in it, but it's just too hard for them. And that's not what we want to say to them. But we can come along with them and share in that reading process. Maybe they read one page and you read one page. Maybe you read a chapter and they read a chapter. Maybe if it is a much more difficult text, maybe you read 2 pages and they read 1. But that's a great way to help make sure they get at least 20 minutes of reading in each night with things that are really around their choice and their desires of things that they want to read. You can also do some iReady at home. If you are new to Alvin ISD, or you've been with us, you've not heard iReady before. It's a brand new program for us that we've just brought on this year. I do caution you, we do not want students on it more than twice a week. I really would prefer you to stick to one night a week. It takes about 15 minutes to complete a lesson. They have some time in class to work on iReady lessons, and iReady, their long-term data tells us that students if they are on iReady between 30 and about 45 minutes a week, that they show extended growth than what we expect out of the year. And so that's what we want for our students. And so it really is it's a practice piece where students will come together, come into a path that's directly connected for them, and it fills in some of their learning gaps. It also helps the teacher where they can push out some lessons to them based on what they're working on in class with word study, or if they see that a student has come in and is struggling in a certain area, they can kind of give them some additional support to help in those areas.
Miss Amne, do you need to say something? You're muted.
I apologize. I saw Robert's hand, and so I apologize.
You're good.
I don't have a question.
So one of the reasons why, Robert, thank you so much for that question. Why do we want to limit the time on the program? Couple of things. Some of the reading, they're doing reading inside iReady, which is important, but we want kids to have exposure to authentic text. We want them to hold a book in their hand. We want them to have the choice of what they're going to read, whereas iReady tells them what they're going to do in the program. Plus, we don't want them to get burnt out on the program. And it's fun. There's games in it, and it's very connected. But we also want reading to be that intimate, fun, engaging, where I got to choose. I'm getting to do something where I'm not just staring at a computer screen all the time. Will tell you, I love to read electronically as well and read my digital books. So we would love them to have access to digital books as well, if that's an option for you in your home. But again, it goes back to that choice. It's not appropriate for kinder through fifth grade students to be on iReady every single night for 15 to 20 minutes, just because it's not what they need. They need some good, authentic reading opportunities. I hope that answers your question. I did want to give you just a little bit more information. iReady has what they call a family center, and they answer a lot of our questions. And you can go to this website, and they will give you some information about if I know you would have all gotten, if you have a kinder through fifth grade student, you would have gotten a diagnostic page that came home, and it was telling you where your kiddo is currently performing based on the assessment that they took. And so if you had some questions about what that information gave you, you can go here and it'll answer it. If you're curious as to what kind of things your student is working on, you can go here. Just know that the product is it grows and changes with your student. So as they are making progress, it increases the rigor of the lessons that they do. If they're struggling in a certain area, it gives them additional practice lessons on those areas. And like I said, too, the teachers have access to go in and also create some lessons for them. And they call it push out. That's what they do, is it pushes the lessons out to each individual student for them to work on as well. So if you just look over your kiddo's shoulder, if they log into iReady, which they can do through Clever from the district website, if a teacher has pushed out a lesson to them, it shows teacher assigned lesson, and then it shows what they call their pathway lessons. And so the students even have a choice at that point. Do I want to work on my teacher lesson, or do I want to work on my pathway lesson whenever they log in? I will say, so far in our journey with iReady, because we are new with it, we feel like it's helping support our students. We feel like our students do enjoy it and they are engaged in it, as long as we keep within the recommended amount of time that iReady says students should be using that each week. How else can we help? Go ahead. Sorry.
Dr. Hobbs, I just wanted to clarify on the last slide. It said 3 to 5 times a week, but that is for the classroom teacher. So I apologize. The updated version has what's recommended at home.
So iReady does recommend that three times a week a student is on iReady. And so we want to balance that when we say if they're on it twice at school, then we want them to be on it once at home. If they're only on it once at school this week, then be on it twice at home. And so when you look at that, if they truly are taking about 15 minutes every time they're on, we would like to max out their time on iReady at about 45 minutes a week, just because we want to do what's best for them instructionally and to support them as readers. The next piece is our vocabulary development, and Michelle talked about the complexity in text in 3, 4, and 5, and how those words get bigger, they get longer, they have more syllables in them. So how do we help create that vocabulary development? One thing that's really important for them is for them to listen to a text that's above their reading level. So if they're a first grade student, you would want to read to them books that maybe a third or fourth grader would be reading, because their listening comprehension is going to be higher than their actual reading ability. And that helps build vocabulary by you reading to them. And that is also a critical part of getting in some of that reading time each night. It also helps build background knowledge. What we know is that we teach all of the standards in Alvin ISD, and we do not teach to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade STAR test. We give kids the instruction that they need so that they're successful, but we do know some things that come up on that test. And one thing that the state has been very clear with us about is that a lot of the passages that are going to be on the 3rd and 4th grade STAR test are going to be heavy in vocabulary, and sometimes those are going to be tied to science teaks and social studies teaks. And the more background knowledge that students have, the better readers they are. So when they have a better understanding. And so when we're reading to them, or they're reading each night, they're growing their background knowledge, their base level of understanding, so that when they come to a text, even if it's a little bit above their reading level, when they have some additional background knowledge, it makes it easier for them to understand. Also, experiences. Let's take a walk to the park. Let's read a book about the park. Let's use the language of the park. Let's come together as a family and let's cook a meal together. Let's read a book about cooking, and then let's use the language of cooking, correct? Like, you're going to rinse off your vegetables, and you're going to turn on the faucet. You're going to turn on the burner on the stove. And by using that vocabulary with them and having your students also use that vocabulary, it is too going to better prepare them for those higher texts that they're going to run into as the complexity increases. And then you want to talk about that. Talk to me about a new vocabulary word that you heard at school today. Talk to me about a text that you listened to. Talk to me about what we just did. Summarize. Tell me, how did you just cook that spaghetti that we ate today? And then the really big bang for your buck is now go write about it. Now that you've had that experience, you've listened to a text about the park, you've gone to the park and you've played at the park. Now come back and write about your experiences at the park. Maybe they write it in a poem form. Maybe they make up a story about the park. And so that is, we know that writing is the hardest skill when it comes to literacy. So it's gonna come a little later than their reading development. And so when you help connect those and bridge that at home, it may not be about, you don't need to use the word imprinting or theme, but the fact that you read 3 books about the park, you read a story about a park, you read a poem about a park, and then you read an informational text about the park, and your student came back and is able to talk about it and then write about their experiences at the park, that is going to help them be more successful in the classroom every day. So a great way to help this is to have conversations with your kids. I highly recommend that you do these. You can use some of these question starters for you when you're sitting at dinner together, when you're getting ready to go to bed. Maybe you take 10 minutes of you time with your kiddo where you're one-on-one, where you're truly having a conversation, where they have your undivided attention. Maybe you're sitting knee to knee and eye to eye, which is what we do when we are teaching kids how to have a conversation. But using questions that you can't get a yes or no answer out of, but then have them really think about, what did you do today? How did learning make you feel? What was the best thing that you read today? So that explanation comes, and then you can understand what they're doing in class. And then they're able to continue to make those long-term memories of what I learned in class today is also something I'm going to continue to use even outside of school, because eventually once they get into the workforce, they're going to read emails and then respond to emails. And so that's kind of what we're starting, right? In the let's read about the park, let's go to the park and experience the park, and let's write about the park. You're helping them start to build those long-term skills that they'll need as a productive citizen.
So we have some tools for reading. This goes along with sometimes we have some kiddos that are a little bit reluctant to read. And so we just have some things here that can make it a little more fun, a special place for books and reading, some highlighter tape, fun glasses, fun pencils and bookmarks, a reading and writing journal, just some things that you guys can have on hand at home to help get kids a little more interested in that reading at home. And then if you'll go to there are some ideas here to support some reluctant readers and some things that you can do. There's an article as well that talks all about reluctant readers and gives some specific details on activities that you can do. So feel free to check that out. Okay. And then we wanted to make sure that you had access to letters and sounds. So some of our pre-readers and some of our students who are just getting into reading are still working on those letters and sounds. And if you guys are like me and you don't live in this world and you don't use letters and sounds every day, like it all comes natural. We know it. And so sometimes it's hard to support our kids in those breaking that down, going back to that level where we're just talking about the sounds that letters make. So we put a video here for you that actually will give you access to every letter and the sounds that they make. And so that's for you guys as a guide for you to go in if you are questioning or if you are trying to help your student, you want to review this just to go over it, you have access to that. But I wanted to show you the alphabet linking chart. We use this across the district. In all of our classrooms, we have this. And so students are practicing those letters and sounds daily. And this is something that some of the teachers may have sent this home. It's something that you can ask the teacher about. But practice this with your kiddo. Have a fun pointer. They don't have to go straight across in the order that the alphabet goes. They can go in different orders. They can start from the back. They can go sideways. So alphabet linking chart for our students who are still learning those letters and sounds is a really good resource to have. And again, we wanted you to have those videos to go in and refresh yourself if you needed that. And then we put just a couple of games here that you guys can play with your kids. If you do have students that are working on those letters and sounds, just a simple I Spy. If you're at home or in the grocery store or driving down the road, I spy something that starts with the letter B. And so the student would guess. Once they guess that, then you would have them say that sound, produce that sound. You could have something that I spy something that ends with a certain letter. And so just some different fun activities, sorting letters here. There's a page linked here that will take you to some ideas where if you have the magnetic letters, then students could sort them by consonants and vowels. They could sort them by straight lines and curved lines. So it's all about just getting them in and manipulating and having access to those and just seeing those letters. Like Dr. Hobbs said, we want kids to know that what they're learning in school transfers to outside school as well. So if these are some things that you're working on, they are going to pick that up and start having more authentic conversations with you about that if it's not just isolated at school. Okay, you can go to the next. And then Michelle's going to talk to you about some more vocabulary development.
So as Dr. Hubbs talked about earlier, vocabulary, it's so important. There's lots of research out there, and the numbers are just staggering of how much, if you're reading to your students or your child or the little person that lives with you, the more you read to them, the more words they're exposed to. And so just a couple of more ideas, as she said, making conversation, reading together, using labels. My father had Alzheimer's, and right before he got too bad off, I labeled everything in the kitchen, and it's still there. But what a fun way for kids just to label parts of the house and things like that. Play word games, use words in sentence, write for pleasure, create a word wall. How about create a refrigerator word wall? Introduce a word of the day. It might be, today we're going to have spaghetti. Let's look at spaghetti and let's think about what all we know about spaghetti. It comes from Italy. Spaghetti is pasta. I mean, they've already learned 3 words just right there. So thinking about any way to continuously build that vocabulary.
And one other thing I wanted to add about that is just think about the things that you're already doing and how you can connect text to that. So if you're taking your family to the aquarium this week, read a quick book on the aquarium. It doesn't have to be a nonfiction text. It could be a fictional story about and it's somebody's adventure to the aquarium. But again, right there, now they're learning the word aquarium. They're already learning some of the things that they're going to see when they get there. And so as they what we need kiddos to do is to build memories and build connections. And so as they can start to connect the names of the animals that they see at the aquarium to the story that they've just read, that puts it in their long-term memory. And then they're able to pull it back up when they need it later on in science or when they need it in the next text that they're going to read that might talk about an aquarium.
That's thank you for saying that. As you were speaking more about vocabulary, I just thought of an idea. My grandbabies are coming down to see me this weekend, and I think I'm going to have them alphabetize the cans in my pantry and see how that goes. I'll let you know. But anyway, I want to also talk about 3 quick comprehension tools. It's so easy to do with your students at home. And this first one, you can do at any age. But as you know, we're competing, you as well, with digital media, and students have instant access to visuals, but we have to help them understand how words create images in our brains. And so I'm just going to read a page from a book that I might read with students, and this is called Ballet of the Elephants, and a circus is coming to town. And here's just one page. So what I'd like for you to do, if you're listening to me, but if you're driving, please don't do this. I want you to close your eyes and just think about what you're seeing as I read this. Lions roared and monkeys argued, trapeze artists, daredevils, acrobats, and 100 clowns paraded through the streets. So did camels, llamas, zebras, burros, hundreds of horses, and 50 elephants. 50 children stayed home from school to watch. Okay, you can open your eyes. Think about what you pictured, what you saw in your head. And so, what I might ask students to do, or your own student to think about, is ask them, what did you see? What colors did you see the most of? What kinds of animals? Do you want to draw it? Let's draw it. Or you might read a piece and you say, you draw what you thought you saw in your head, and I'll draw what I saw in my head, and then let's compare. So these are just some really quick, easy things to think about that are so easy. If you read a page and it's really giving a good description, just stopping and reading and talking about visualization with them. So I saw a comment in the chat room, and I don't know if that I understood the whole thing, and we'll go back to it, but this is just a picture book from my personal library. But a lot of picture books, like if you go to the library or the school library, a lot of your picture books are basically are really good quality books that you could use with most students. And your librarian, of course, would tell you that here's some good examples for 1st and 2nd grade versus 4th and 5th. Picture books tend to have a variety of language and opportunities for more visualization. The next one's really easy as well. It's I use this quite a bit in small groups. It's read, cover, recite, check, but it's kind of a long name. But basically all you're doing is, and I might not do this in a picture book, I would probably do this in a regular chapter book or a small leveled book. But I might ask the child to read a few pages. It might be 1 page, it might be 2 or 3, and then just say, okay, cover up that last page and tell me what you just read about, or draw what you just read about. And then I might ask them, okay, take your hand off and go back and reread that page or look through that page. Is that what you remembered? And so it's just a really good way to stop kids during the reading. Not that you want to stop them all the time, but occasionally, and checking in. What did you read about? Draw it or tell me about it. Now go back and check. Are you right? So it's a quick summary. And then the next one is hashtags. Everybody loves a good hashtags. So For example, hashtag wolves bad, hashtag bricks good, hashtag pigs just want a home. Can you put in the chat box what story this is? If you did put it in the chat box or you're just thinking about it, I hope you're thinking of the Three Little Pigs, because this is a great idea after you've read something that you can just ask your child, hey, you've seen on mommy or daddy or uncle or aunties or someone's Instagram where we hashtag everything. Let's make a hashtag because it's a shortened version of summarizing what they've read. So those are 3 quick and easy ways that you can build comprehension with children. And then finally, the next thing is please don't forget about writing any little notebook you could give children. They take it with them. If you make it a priority that we take time and we write what we're seeing, we write what we're feeling, we write what we're noticing, we draw in it. It's a really great tool for kids to get used to and to be a part of their identity. And so here are some great questions that will help with discussion and written responses.
So I'm going to take just a minute to answer a few questions that are in the chat box, and then we will move over to any other questions that we might have. There was a question about understanding a kindergarten through 2nd grade report card. So we have what's called a standards-based report card. And so we list out the standards that students need to learn that year, and then we give a 1, 2, 3, or 4 based on where they are on the scale of mastering that skill. And so a 4 would mean that they've mastered it. 1 means they're working below grade level expectations. 2 means they're starting to make progress to it. And then 3 is like they've got a handle on it. They just don't have it down every single time. And so if your child is at a 2, there's a couple of things to think about. We're still early in the school year. So this is maybe a skill that's going to be taught over and over and over again through it. It's going to spiral throughout the rest of the year. And so the expectation is that that 2 would then turn into a 3 the next 9 weeks, and then eventually move into the 4, where you might get a little concerned and have a conversation with the teacher is if the first 9 weeks they were 2 and the second 9 weeks they were 2, and they're in the box where it talks about their reading level, they're reading below level, then that would let you to know that the student needs some additional support. And I would definitely reach out and talk to the teacher and see what else we can do to help support that process. Somebody asked about where do I find books that match my kids' reading level, and that is not what we expect you to do. We expect kids to go out and find books that they love for their choice. And so we teach students a couple different ways to look at books to see if it's an appropriate book for them. And so we have them pop it open, read the first page or 2 and see, do they struggle a lot? Are there a lot of words in there that they don't know? Then that would tell us that the book is too hard. So they open up the book and they read the first 2 pages super quick and they know every single word. Well, that book might be a little too easy. And so we want to look for that, what we call a just right book for our students. But there's also a balance in that as well, because sometimes there's just some confidence builder and we build some fluency when we grab that book that's a little too easy. We just like it. So again, that's my choice. And then I really want to read this book, even though it's a little hard for me. Okay, so mom, dad, guardian, how are you going to help support me in reading that book that's a little bit too hard? But then maybe I just keep looking around for a book that really fits that, what we call just right. So there might be 1 or 2 words on the page that I don't know, but I'm still able to talk about what I read. That's what we would consider a just right book, because there's still a little bit of what we call productive struggle. I got to struggle just a little bit. That's what makes me a better reader, but I'm not frustrated in my struggle because there's so much on the page that I don't understand. And so it really is about just trying out a couple books, trying out a couple pages, finding out what I'm interested in, really looking for books that meet my needs as a reader when it comes to the independent reading that I do at home. We really want that to be choice-based. And then right now, consistently for the last at least 7 summers, and I plan to do it continuing into this summer, each of our campuses will have a campus-based summer reading program for elementary. And so the campus will kind of create a way for students to document the reading that they do over the summer. And then we celebrate those students in the month of September and early October if they've participated in whatever their reading program is at that campus. Normally, it's either a reading log where they log the number of minutes they've done. It may be choose from a couple different books and then maybe write about it. It's nothing difficult, but it is just a way of making sure that students are still getting some reading done during the summer. We would say 3 to 5 days a week that they read for at least 20 minutes. And then we want to celebrate them for doing that work when they get back to school. Alvin ISD no longer has access to Imagine Learning. We parted ways with them. We just felt like their program was no longer meeting our needs for the Imagine Language and Lit side of it. We still have Imagine Math, but that's not my wheelhouse, and so I'm going to leave that right there. But what we replaced Imagine Language and Lit with is iReady, and your students will continue to have access to that over the summer. Again, it's not something we expect for them to log into every single day, but maybe 3 times a week for 15 minutes at a time would be an appropriate amount for students to spend doing some iReady lessons. And then I see some recommendations for spelling. So again, with spelling, we want to talk about ways that we can help write those memories for our students. And so we love a good set of magnetic letters in our department. And so think about ways that you can grab magnetic letters from like the dollar store, and students can manipulate and create those letters because then they're writing those spelling words on their brain. And think about new and creative ways they can use the spelling words. And so have them say, use 2 of your spelling words in conversation. Now that they've used them, now go back and spell them. And movement with spelling words is really important too. So maybe you have them bounce the basketball and spell the spelling word. Maybe they're throwing the baseball because that's what they like to do. At my house, we ride our bikes around the neighborhood, and as our legs are pedaling, we practice those spelling words because they're helping write those, again, make those connections on their brain. Michelle and Joni, do you have anything to add to that for spelling?
Yeah. So one of
Go
the
ahead,
things
Joni.
on this scope and sequence on the website, it does tell what skills we're learning in phonics for the 9 weeks. And so, you know, conversation or communication with the teacher, just this, and because we want students to learn the pattern, not just that one word, but if they are working on the short A sound, we want them to be able to spell the short A words, not just that one word. And so talking to kids about the spelling pattern, what spelling pattern are you learning this week? And they are getting explicit instruction in that. And so we want them to be able to say, hey, this week we're learning the short I, and that's coming up next week in kinder. I happen to know that one. And so they'll learn the short I sound next week in kinder. And so if you have a kinder kiddo, ask them next week, what sound are you learning now? And then start using that in some of the words that if they learn the spelling rule, then they should be able to apply that into any words and not just a set of words that come home. And so that's where we always want to take kids to, well, what's your spelling pattern this week? And then that's what I want to help you with.
I'm going to just put the words in the chat box. But if you think about what we did in the read, cover, recite, check, it's a fun study tool where students look at the word, they say the word, they write the word, then they check it. And I don't have a really good visual here, but it's great to do with like where you flip paper up. Sorry. And this could just be cutting a folder. And so they write their words in one column, then or you call out a word. Well, they would write the correct spelling. Then they look at it, they cover it up, they read it or say it, and then they try to write it. And then they go to the next column and they check it. And here's where it gets sometimes fun. Well, you don't want it to be too fun, but you might take a highlighter and highlight the parts you're missing. And so if you do that for your words, then you can also see am I missing a certain pattern, or am I missing a letter or two here? And that word, I might then get some magnetic letters out that I've missed and practice those using magnetic letters. We use it a lot, and we use manila folders, and we just make 3 or 4 cuts and put a piece of paper under it, and we write look, say, write, check. And so it's a quick and easy way. It's a way to study words, and it's a really good way for, I would say, maybe, I guess any age could do it, but probably second grade on up.
We can add a slide to the end of that gives that visual for you, so that when you get the copy of this, you'll be able to see that. And then there's a question about any suggestion on writing clubs or workshops. And I have to be honest with you, I don't know of any, but I do know that what we just want them to do is practice authentic writing. So think about if you're taking a trip to the aquarium, you're taking a trip to the park, giving them a special notebook to write about their experiences. What did you learn? If you know you're planning a vacation over Thanksgiving break, then how can they journal? What was the favorite thing that we did today? Wow, did you experience that? Maybe they write before they go do something. What are you expecting to happen? You can always write about what they read. That's super helpful, because that's something that they're going to be doing in school a lot. And then we always want them to go back and reread their own writing. That's how we know that they start to catch their own grammar mistakes. They start to catch their own punctuation and capitalization mistakes. And it's not about perfect writing, but it's just about to become aware of who I am as a writer. And so your students may not identify with who they are as a writer. So you might say, hey, maybe today, why don't you try writing a comic strip? Maybe they don't know what a comic strip is. So what a great reading experience for us to get out a comic strip and look at that, and then draw and illustrate some pictures that go along with our text. If they're reading poetry at school, maybe you come home and whatever you're about to do, you together create a poem together. And so it's just about what we call authentic writing situations. Where can you fit just a few minutes of writing into the day that you're doing? I don't know about you, but I have to have a list when I go to the grocery store. Maybe your student helps you make that grocery list. Maybe you tell them 3 or 4 things that you need, and then you have them come up with what does that list look like? And then you can have a conversation when you get home about all of the things that you collected on your grocery run. So just kind of thinking about what are some things that you know you're already going to be doing that you can build in just a little bit of writing to help support that. Ladies, anything to add? Okay. All right. I think we have just a few more minutes. We got about 2 more minutes. So if there are any other questions, we would like to address those at this time.
And I have opened the microphone, so if anybody wants to make a question over the microphones, you guys can now.
Hello. I was just wondering. I'm at work, so I missed some of it. Is it? I know this is recorded. Will y'all be sending it to us?
Yes, I will be sending it probably by Monday. I need to edit it, and then I wait for them to send me the presentation. We share with you guys the PDF of the presentation as well. So yes, you should be receiving this by Monday next week.
When you say the PDF, or are you talking about the app? I'm actually talking about.
No, you'll receive both. You receive the presentation, the recording,
okay.
And you also receive the PDF of the presentation as well.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm also in the same boat, so I don't know if this was addressed, but I have a 3rd grader who is very much behind. She's on a 1st grade reading level, and I was trying to find out what resources were available, especially knowing she's going to have to take the STAR test this year.
Yes, ma'am. So again, the best way to become a better reader is to read. And so just making sure we're getting that practice in every night, reading to them as well to continue to build that vocabulary. And then I would highly recommend the use of iReady twice a week at home to help fill in some of those gaps as well. And then can stay in constant contact with the teacher with things that your student might be struggling with, so that you can continue to support those pieces at home. So the things that they've already got control of, you can move forward with that. And then all of the strategies that were presented today in this presentation would be very helpful for you as well.
So is there a way that she's able to have during testing someone to read to her?
So when it comes to the RLA test, the student has to read the selection themselves because it is a reading test. If she qualifies, she could have access to the questions and answer choices being read to her, but that would it would have to go through the MTSS system at school. So you would want to talk to her teacher, and the problem solving team would help provide you some more information about that. And if you don't get the answers that you need, please reach out to me. My email address is coming up. I also oversee MTSS and can help you navigate that situation as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. I called in over the phone, so I cannot see the slides. But they'll be emailed out
Yes, ma'am.
next week. Okay.
Yeah, yes. And my name is Chandra Hobbs, and I oversee MTSS for the district. And so I would be more than happy to help you with anything that you need.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. We did have one question in the chat box. I was asking about handwriting, and though it is a STAR is a computer-based test, and they will be typing. And again, the best way to support handwriting is with practice. We don't want kids to sit down and just practice handwriting, but when they practice authentic writing in those situations, I will tell you from personal experience, I'm dealing with this right now with my own personal third grader, is when it's not done to the best of their ability, then we have to go back and we have to start again and do it again. And so we just we have to maintain high expectations for handwriting, and it needs to be written in a way that we can understand it, what's being written. And I do believe my counterparts would probably agree with me on those high expectations for handwriting, and just so sorry, but you'll have to go back and practice again to make sure that we're maintaining the quality of what we expect.
Yes, and I'll jump in there as well. It is all about the expectation. On a personal level, I taught my son in third grade, and it's important. Handwriting is important. And he, to this day, has beautiful handwriting, probably better than mine. And as he's 17, he's a senior, and I was helping him study the other day, and his handwriting is beautiful. And he will tell you, not very kindly, it's because my mom made me erase it and do it over and over. But on that authentic piece, like Dr. Hobbs said, if it's not up to your expectation, we redo that. And so that's something that if you have them write at home in that authentic journal, and it's not to your expectation, then we're going to erase it and we're going to try that again. And so that's something that's really important that we do try to stress, is that handwriting is in the TEKS. It's an expectation that we teach it, and we do. It's just that kiddos really like to write fast and not neat, but they can, and they know the pathways. We teach those very explicitly in our daily activities. And so if that's not what you're seeing come home, or if that's not what you're seeing happening at home, that is probably something that I would have them to redo a little bit of that as practice.
And you can make it fun. You can write with fun pens or fun different color map pencils or those kinds of things. So remember just to keep it engaging and not like it's not a forced thing to practice every night, but how can we do that in an authentic way?
Dr. Hobbs, I'd just like to add, not necessarily what you can do at home, but we do teach handwriting, and then we also provide students with a lot of our unit tests. We'll do on the computer. We've recommended that kids practice with the keyboard, typing their spelling words. And so there are things at school that we're also doing as well. And I put a title in the box. Someone was asking about a keyboarding website. You can Google. There's a lot of good ones, but there's Kids Type, and then Google actually has one that we use a lot here. I don't have the actual link, but if you search through Google typing, I think it's part of Chrome. So just wanted to address that.
Okay, our time is up, but this is who we are. We are here to serve you and to serve teachers and serve students. And so if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us and we will help support you in that. We appreciate you taking your time today to be with us, and we hope that we were able to provide you with some support that you need to help support your students. So thank you.